Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Seriously Strange podcast. This episode of the Seriously Strange podcast is sponsored by Audible. Audible is the leading provider of audiobooks with over 250,000 titles to choose from. Go to audible.com/seriouslystrangecast to start your 30-day free trial with Audible. And thank you to our sponsor, our first sponsor. I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Cayleigh Elise.
I'm here. Thank you, Audible. We appreciate it.
Yes, we do appreciate it. It's going to help the podcast go, and you using Audible out there just helps the podcast even more, and they're great. So, yeah. All right, so here's just a few changes to run over really quickly before Cayleigh gets to This Week in Weird that we want to kind of go over with you. We are condensing these episodes into shorter episodes, about a half hour long. This is going to be a change as we move forward into a video format.
Yes.
So we feel this is kind of necessary. It's going to take a lot of work off the editor, off of Cayleigh and I, so we're going to be able to produce more. Because we do want to release weekly, filmed podcast episodes. So, it is an undertaking of a substantial size, especially when Cayleigh's working so hard on my channel as well as hers. And then I'm also working my ass off on my channel as well. So those are things to consider.
In the midst of moving. So,
yes,
real life too.
Yes. Right. So this is, it's fun. We got a lot of fun to be had here. Okay, so today's topic is Danny Casolaro, who is, well, he's an individual who died under pretty odd circumstances, and once you figure out what he was doing before he died, it makes you scratch your head even more. He was involved with uncovering something of a government secret of sorts, an international, like many governments. So we're going to talk about him and the circumstances surrounding his death in this episode. But first, and we can't forget this, we've got This Week in Weird with Cayleigh Elise.
This Week in Weird.
All right, Cayleigh, hit us with it.
I'm going to start with the one you sent me. You usually don't know about this, but
I usually don't know the stories before she lays them on me, but I said, Cayleigh, we've got to do this one, and it's one a lot of you probably have heard, but go ahead. Let's hear it.
I'm not going to read the headline, because it ruins the whole thing. I'm going to tell it like a story.
Yes.
Here we go. There's a 96-year-old man and an 87-year-old woman just sitting in their senior living center, and the woman's munching on a hamburger, and all of a sudden, she starts choking. So this man notices that she's obviously not able to breathe. She's turning red in the face. He gets up, walks over, performs the Heimlich maneuver on her, which, for those of you who don't know, is that thing you do to dislodge something from someone's throat to get them to stop choking and open up their airwaves. But yada yada, this guy saves this woman's life. It's Dr. Heimlich. That's his name, but it's not just any Dr. Heimlich. This man is the same man credited with developing the maneuver in the first place. And, just a little cherry on top, he never got to use his technique on anyone until that moment, at 96 years old.
96 years old, Dr. Heimlich is. He developed it. Never got to use it until that day. And here's the thing, and my father mentioned this. He's just like, okay, restaurant, that's kind of suspicious, right? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, do you think this guy goes to restaurants with elderly people in there and just waits for them to start choking so he can he can have his chance to finally validate? And I'm like, yeah, maybe, maybe he just, all of a sudden shouts, and scares the crap out of everyone. And then, then he just waits for someone to choke. Then he jumps in and saves the damn day. It's like a firefighter setting buildings on fire,
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm glad.
So that's a pretty cool little thing.
Got to use that.
When I heard that, I was like, that's the definition of seriously strange.
It really
holy
is.
crap. Really.
You just happen to live in the same senior living center as Dr. Heimlich maneuver.
Dr. Heimlich maneuver.
Yeah.
It's Dr. Maneuver, but if you'd like to use his first
Heimlich's
name.
his first name.
Yeah, Dr. Heimlich maneuver. All right, great. All right, hit us with the next one.
All right, this next one, fair warning, might get kind of gross, so here we go.
Love it.
Woman with addiction to chewing her hair has huge hairball removed from her stomach. And there's video footage.
Oh, yay!
Yay. So, here's the story of a woman who lived in northern India. Last week, she goes to her local hospital saying she's having severe stomach pain. She couldn't eat or drink even a sip of water without vomiting. So the doctor asks her if she's had a hair chewing problem because apparently she was chewing her hair as she was telling them this. And she denied it at first, but they did an ultrasound, and ultrasounds don't lie. And boy, did that lady chew hair. She had an enormous mass of hair in her stomach. Doctors freak out, immediately say she needs surgery. They remove a 6.5-pound hairball from her stomach.
Come on.
It was 15 inches long. The doctor said that both her stomach and intestines were so full of hair she wasn't able to digest anything, even the tiniest amount of water or food. And the woman after surgery said she's had a hair chewing addiction since she was 9. And the doctor said they've never seen a case this bad.
Yeah, and here's the thing. This isn't the first time this has happened.
No.
This has happened. I remember it on Ripley's Believe It or Not. They covered this. A girl, just a young girl, she has really long hair, but she would eat her hair. People, stop eating your hair. It doesn't digest. Have you ever had a cat? Have you ever seen a cat? They puke that up because they can't. It just doesn't digest. They either crap it out or they puke it up, and it's really annoying, and it's the worst part of having a cat, but stop eating your hair. Just don't do it. It's not. Just stop it. Don't do it. And if you can help yourself, use a shampoo that doesn't smell so darn good. You know, like there's some coconut shampoos out there.
Yeah.
Oh man, I love coconut, and it's I don't know. I'd eat my own hair. Actually, I'm gonna. So lesson not learned.
Can you save
Go
it
ahead.
till later?
Yeah, maybe. Not. I'm gonna do it during the podcast here. Sorry. All right, go ahead. Hit us with the last one.
Well, speaking of coconut, guess where we're going today?
Oh, come on.
I'm just going to say we should always have one from Florida every week, because there just is one.
There always is one from
It's
Florida.
not my fault this time, though. This one
It's
was
never your
sent-
fault.
This time it was sent in by 2 Twitter followers, so thank you to Brian Vannersdale and Colton Simmons. Sorry if I butchered either of your names.
Thanks,
for tweeting
guys.
me for This Week in Weird. If you have a headline or story you come across and it's been posted within the last 7 days, send it to me and I might choose it for the podcast. So with all that being said, this one is short and sweet, and I love it because it involves one of my favorite animals. Turtle goes airborne, shatters driver's windshield.
Ah, okay. I heard this.
Did you? Awesome.
Yes,
Okay.
incredible. You almost shocked me this week, but I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. I've been keeping up on my news. All right,
Very
lay it on
strange
us.
news. Okay. So a woman named Nicole was driving about 70 miles per hour down the interstate when the car in front of her ran over this turtle, but I guess the angle it was hit at or something caused it to be thrown into the air and go through her windshield, completely shattering it.
Right.
And Nicole got minor cuts and bruises and injuries, but she was otherwise unharmed. And I was thinking when I was reading this, there's no way this turtle survived being run over, flung into a windshield at a car going 70 miles an hour in the opposite direction. He lived.
Yeah, he did. He did.
He was totally fine,
Yep.
and they released him into a pond right next to the highway.
I saw
which
people
I thought
sharing
was a bad
this.
idea.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like just, well, I mean, you're supposed to, but you know,
Yeah.
still, it's kind of like he's just going to do this again. He gets off on it. It's just one of those turtle things. But I saw friends sharing this on Facebook, and I was just like, and people were laughing their ass off. I'm like, why are you laughing? Like, okay, cool. You know, oh, funny. You know, a turtle flew through a windshield. Whatever. Like, I get that it's like you're expecting a deer, but it's a turtle. Like, why? But I can't laugh at things where animals are like killed in traffic accidents. I just can't.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh, the turtle lived.
He lives, so
And
it's
I'm like,
all good.
Okay, it's good. Like, and the turtle apparently was unharmed. You can really kind of tell when a turtle is screwed up. Their shell will be broken. There'll be blood. But yeah, I guess the turtle was fine. So all's well.
Benefits of being a turtle.
So all in all, I think all of these are stories of survival this week.
They kind of are.
Yeah. I mean, you got the Heimlich guy, saved a woman's life, fulfilled his own life. You got the girl who acted like a human cat and got saved by surgery. And then the turtle lived and the woman lived in the accident. That is phenomenal.
Yes.
What a great feel-good series of stories.
Yay. Starting off on a light note because it's going to get dark.
Because it's going to get dark. All right. So, Danny Castellaro, do you want to kind of give us an intro on good old Danny and what he did?
Sure. Danny Castellaro was a 44-year-old investigative journalist he was researching something that he referred to as the octopus. He said it was this giant organization that it's hard to explain.
They basically control just about everything. It's the Illuminati.
Yeah, it's the Illuminati on crack, basically.
Yeah, it's an organization, international organization that has its. He calls it the octopus because it has so many different branches in everything that occurs, from guaranteeing elections to a number of certain scandals back, especially in the 1980s, because this is really when he was focusing on. So Danny was one of these journalists for trying to uncover this kind of stuff. Now, a lot of people out there will know what PRISM is, and PRISM's kind of what Edward Snowden exposed for, like, tracking people, the NSA, keeping tabs on people. But there was something that came before PRISM, and that was something called PROMIS, without an E. And that was developed. It was a program developed by a company called Inslaw, which I hate. I hate that name because it reminds me of in-law and coleslaw, and I don't like. I mean, I like
those two
coleslaw.
things put together is just not fun.
Not together. I like coleslaw. Not together. That's weird. I don't even know. But so so when I heard Inslaw, I'm just like, why would you ever name your thing that? But so they developed PROMIS, which is initially to keep kind of track of, like, court records and everything like that, but the Department of Justice...
it was for the Department of Justice and their attorneys and stuff at first.
Right, and it was supposed to be just to monitor court records and, figure out everything that's going on and, like, keep everything orderly, keep information in, like, a database where they could easily search people and their cases and all that. However, the Department of Justice got their hands on it. And, like, the government tends to do, or what a lot of people think anyway... is that the government took it and they basically stole it.
Yeah, they really did.
Inslaw.
Because as far as I read, Inslaw didn't receive a penny for this item the software that they developed. And not only that, the Department of Justice was supposed to be the only department that was using it, but they had technical people come in and tweak the software, gave it to the CIA, the NSA, and for intelligence agencies for their use to track whatever they wanted. It was developed to be manipulated so you could kind of track whatever you wanted in there, and it worked a little too well. So it made it really easy for them to say, I want to track bank transactions or marriage licenses, mortgage, lawsuits, arms deals, things like that. They got heavily involved in all of it, and it was that was crazy to read. Right.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So, Inslaw develops this. The Department of Justice takes it, doesn't give them any money for it, and they start tweaking it into a way that is a lot closer to PRISM, which is, tracking people. So, Inslaw, obviously, the developers there. Was it Bill Hamilton? I think that was the guy's name. Bill and Nancy Hamilton, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
They developed. They are the owners of Inslaw. They developed PROMIS. And so the Department of Justice gets their hands on it. They're converting it to this other thing, and they're not paying them. So Inslaw takes them to court, or they take the issue to court. And they believed that it went before a judge, and the judge ruled that the Department of Justice in 1988 had taken the software, quote, by trickery, fraud, and deceit. And then it was upheld by a federal district court, and it was overturned 3 years later. Now, oddly enough, the judge that made the decision to say, yes, Inslaw, you're right, the Department of Justice took PROMIS from you and whatnot, and it didn't pay you anything, and they're trying to use it for, shitty purposes, he was never put back in his position as a judge. He was basically thrown out.
Yeah.
Demoted, oddly enough.
Yeah.
Right. By the powers that be.
Yeah.
If that, if it didn't, that wasn't weird. So Danny was in contact with Bill Hamilton, the guy who created Inslaw. And that's kind of where this rabbit hole began, because Danny was a freelance writer. He was writing originally, then he stopped for a while, then he got back in, and this is what he started pursuing. And it would end, his pursuit would end with his death.
Right.
Which is just incredibly odd.
It's an odd death, and it's incredibly sad. Right,
it is. Now, how much have you read on Michael? I don't even know how to pronounce his last name. I believe it's Riconosciuto. Some people out there are like, what an asshole. He totally mispronounced that. Apparently, this guy was like a weapons expert, like a weapons designer. Okay, this guy at the age of 9 allegedly was able to create his neighborhood, give them their own like private telephone network.
That's crazy.
And undercut the telephone company. So like at age 9.
Whoa.
So he's like this incredible designer, very brilliant mind. Apparently he had worked on weapons, developing weapons, particularly a fuel-air explosive, which are incredibly violent and deadly. However, later on he was charged with selling methamphetamine. Or creating it, producing it, distributing it, and whatnot.
Walter Whiting it.
Right, so he's in prison today, and apparently he said that was a setup to try to discredit him and keep him from whatnot, but from telling the story, which he told anyway. But again, it kind of his place in prison discredits him.
Yeah, exactly.
But he gave a lot of information to Danny Casolaro, where he said that there's a lot of things out there that may have guaranteed elections. They call it an October surprise. For those who don't know, an October surprise is something that happens kind of before an election that determines the election, whether it's an event that's been fabricated purposely in order to get someone into the presidency, or it was just something that happened and it was like, this event. I remember it's a stupid analogy, but if you've ever seen the movie Canadian Bacon, with John Candy,
I've eaten the food.
Yeah, the food's pretty good. I mean, it's pretty much just pieces of ham, but Canadian Bacon is it stars John Candy, and the president, his whole term was like all peaceful, so people didn't find a reason to actually reelect him because it was just like whatever. He didn't have to really do anything that made him, special. So he ended up waging war on Canada. So he could win the war and have won a war while in presidency so he could be reelected. So that's kind of like an October surprise kind of thing in a much simpler, kind of funny way.
Or like when a celebrity has a movie coming out and they go through like this hideous breakup right before the movie. It's like, maybe that was a publicity stunt, but maybe it was real.
Right, exactly. And if it was real, but it still fed money into the... Yeah, it's still, an October surprise of sorts, right? Yeah. That's a good way to think about it. So apparently Ronald Reagan was one of the presidents who used this tactic, and in 1980, Riconosciuto had facilitated this deal. Iranian officials had a number of American hostages, and apparently Riconosciuto was involved in a deal that paid $40 million to Iranian officials to not release the American hostages before the conclusion of the presidential election. So that Ronald Reagan would get in easier.
That's crazy.
So that's when the October surprise thing kind of came into play. He was apparently directly involved with that. And in exchange for assisting the Reagan administration in this way, he was allowed to profit from the illegal distribution of the system, the promise system that Inslaw had created. So that
makes sense.
Right. It's a rabbit hole. I mean, it's kind of confusing.
So you got half of the rabbit hole, I got the other half.
Right.
So it's like I knew it had been distributed to other governments for the purposes of counterterrorism, but I didn't know how.
Right.
That is incredibly interesting and weird.
Yeah, counterterrorism and a number of other things. Yeah. I mean, they always say it's counterterrorism, but in reality, it's basically to track your own people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the end of the day, the more knowledge is power. The more you know about the people, the more power you have over them.
Mm-hmm.
And that works in politics too. So
Yes.
that's why it's so rare to find a politician who hasn't sold out or switched their vote, flip-flopped and all that, because in politics, it's a lot of that kind of strong-arming and saying, listen, if you don't vote this way, then I think you might, you know, be relocated,
Mm-hmm.
or you might have a different position come next year, or, you know, whatever it may be. So it's shady and it sucks, and that's kind of the system we have.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it kind of blows. But the promise system, again, the precursor to what PRISM is today, pretty much that's how it's seen as. And this Ricano Shudo guy, he profited off of it by playing this huge role. And again, he's a genius weapons expert, but then eventually he got sent to prison. Ricano Shudo also said that he had modified the software, the Promise software, after the Department of Justice asked him to, and created a backdoor so it could be accessed by more people. And basically it just became kind of a slutty little program.
Yeah.
And that was just used by pretty much anyone with enough power and enough money to use it. So that was not what Inslaw originally intended, and that's partly why they got so mad. Another reason was because they didn't get any money from it.
Yeah. Exactly.
So again, pretty confusing, but let's get more into Danny himself. But we'd like to take another quick moment to give a special thanks to Audible for sponsoring this episode of the Seriously Strange podcast. With over 250,000 audiobook titles from tons of different genres, you can't go wrong with Audible. Not to mention that when you use Audible, you can listen on any device, your computer, iPhone, iPad, Android, or tablet. I've been using Audible myself for a few years now, and they are amazing. Trust me when I say that. So once again, go to audible.com/seriouslystrangecast. Start your 30-day free trial. Choose your free audiobook and start listening anywhere you want. Thank you again to Audible. Again, use them. Give them a shot. Audible.com/seriouslystrangecast. You will not be disappointed. I can't even barely keep up with all the free audiobooks I'm allowed to choose, because they give you like a new free one every month, and
That's
just like, okay.
a ton of books to choose from.
It's a ton. It's great. It's awesome.
And I use Audible as well, and every time I go on there, I'm like, oh, I wonder if they have this. And it's some obscure thing, but they have it.
Oh yeah, I know. They're great. They're fascinating with that. I mean, I remember when I started kind of doing work with them, they were at like 150,000 titles. They've grown over 100,000 since then, which is
ridiculous.
They're always growing. It's great. Maybe I'll read for them one day. Who knows? I don't know.
That would be cool.
Maybe if you go over and use them, I will. I can't promise anything, but yeah, okay. So, all right, Cayleigh, why don't you lead us in and talk a little bit about Danny's events leading up, from the phone calls he was receiving at home. You know what I mean? Like, I guess he was receiving
getting
death threats.
His housekeeper was getting death threats, I think daily, that she was taking calls for him. And they were death threats to him, talking about if he, talked, that he would be killed or his family would be killed. Just, death threat stuff. He also was set to meet a man, I believe his name was, William Turner. He was going to travel to West Virginia to speak with this man who supposedly knew more about this octopus thing he was investigating. And octopus was involved in the Inslaw scandal.
Right.
Which is why, and apparently it was involved with the BBCI and illegal drugs, arms trade, things like that, the bank collapse. So that's why he was trying to uncover this. And he was connecting justice officials with members of organized crime, which is kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
your government can't be involved in organized crime because
but they are. Yeah. We all kind of know it, but he was over there uncovering it and substantiating it. Bill Hamilton, the guy who founder of Inslaw, had given Danny paperwork and saying here, have at it.
Yeah.
And little did he know that would lead to something terrible.
Yeah.
Whether it be the government that did this or not. But keep going. Go on.
So he went to meet this guy who was supposedly going to give him more information about the octopus and all of this involvement. He goes and no one hears from him. And before he leaves, he tells his friends that if he turns up dead, they shouldn't believe it was an accident, because he believed heavily that he would be, there were people after him because of this information.
Right. So he told his family, if I'm dead, it wasn't my fault or an accident. It was that this is murder. This is murder.
So nobody hears from him again. And the next person to see him was the housekeeping maid at a hotel. He was found dead in, I think it was room 517 at a hotel he was staying at.
Sheridan.
The Sheridan, that's right. And
in Martinsburg, correct? Martinsburg, West Virginia?
West Virginia, correct.
Yeah.
He was found by a housekeeping maid. He had, in the bathtub is where he was, he had 12 cuts to his wrists, and they were so deep that some of them had sliced through the tendon. He had 8 on one arm, 4 on the other, and there was signs that he had slit his wrists and bled to death, is what they thought. Because there was no sign of forced entry or a struggle, minus the blood on the walls, which if you slit your wrists, that's kind of going to happen anyways.
Right.
But friends and family doubted the verdict of suicide, which is ultimately what was decided upon, is that he killed himself.
By slitting his wrists.
Yes, and there's a number of different reasons why they didn't believe that, and why a lot of people in the justice system didn't believe that, and it just doesn't add up.
Right.
Yeah.
So he was supposed to meet with this individual, but I guess the guy stood him up.
Yeah,
so
he never showed up.
Right, but he was talking with another man who was in the room right next to him, at the hotel, or the bar, the hotel bar.
The bar at the hotel.
Right. So, he was meeting with him there, and his name was Mike Looney. So he was in room right next to room 517. So they were seen chatting together for a while. After, I believe he went to get a coffee at around 10 at night at a convenience store, and that was the last time anyone saw him.
So it wasn't entering his hotel room; it was at a convenience store.
Yeah, at about 10 p.m. Right, but. I don't think anyone saw him enter his room. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know, to be completely honest, because there's, so many different sources with so much different information.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
there's so much. If you guys want to do your own digging, there's so much.
Right.
You will probably find stuff we didn't find just because there's so much stuff to wade through when it comes to this case.
Right. He was at a restaurant in Martinsburg, and a bartender there was, noticed him there. And said that he looked sad and depressed and lonely, which is, kind of, I guess that kind of attaches to the suicide kind of theory. But, then he was at the cocktail lounge at the Sheridan with a man who was described as maybe Arab or Iranian. And as you know, he was involved, he was studying the case where the Iranian officials were withholding hostages, for that $40 million or whatever it was. So then he met a guy, it was Mike Looney, who rented the room next to his, and they chatted for a bit. Looney was questioned. He said that he was there that Danny was there to meet an important source who was going to give him what he needed to solve the case. So this was it. He was like on the doorstep, according to him, he was on the doorstep of solving this octopus case. Apparently he was supposed to arrive around 9, but Danny parted ways from Mike Looney and saying he needed to take a telephone call. He came back a few minutes later and said the source might have blown him off. Apparently he must have, if there was ever a source, because apparently there were a number of things that didn't really add up about Danny, where he said that he had some information that he really kind of didn't. I think he was just trying to, there was at one point people were kind of suspicious that he was just trying to loop people into the story, saying that he had this and that, this proof, that proof, but he could never show the proof.
Yeah, he was always very vague.
Right.
And he had no detail whenever he talked about this.
Right. And now his housekeeper was watching his home after he left. And apparently the housekeeper got a number of phone calls, one of which said, "I will cut his body and throw it to the sharks."
Mm-hmm.
Another one said, "Drop dead." Another call came in, but no one spoke, but the woman could hear music playing like through a radio. And then another call came in just like that one, and then a fifth call came in that was silent. It came at later into the night. So now Danny was gone at this time. Could it have been Danny? Could it have been Danny? Because there's a whole angle to this that Danny went about discovering this octopus, this multi-faceted secret organization with ties to most any scandal on the face of the planet.
Yeah.
Or there was him on this path, which there could be something, and I think there is to some degree. There's something out there that people don't know about, but it comes down to, what was he about to uncover it, or was he on the path to do so, wasn't finding enough evidence of it, and therefore started fabricating things to make this look like, to make us do what we're doing now.
Yeah, because there is two sides of it.
Right. So yeah, they found him in his hotel room at about noon. So that must have been a little, maybe an hour after checkout probably, or something like that. They found him in there. Apparently the scene was so bloody that one of the people at the hotel fainted when they saw it, which isn't really too telling. I mean, I know some people that would faint just seeing a cut on someone's hand. So it's, it's not really a indicator that it was that gruesome, but it probably, from the accounts, it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
So, and apparently a note had been written: "To those who I love the most, please forgive me for the worst possible thing I could have done. Most of all, I'm sorry to my son. I know deep down inside that God will let me in." Now, apparently he wrote that. No struggle, no forced entry. He had been drinking, which it was substantiated by the fact that he was out that night and whatnot, but he had been drinking. Wasn't there like a wine bottle found in the bathtub with him?
I think
there was some alcohol container found in the bathtub with him, something like razor blades. But police pretty much said it's a pretty straightforward suicide.
Yes.
The autopsy kind of confirmed that. They did say that he was on medication.
They found antidepressants, I think, in his blood.
Antidepressants.
Yes.
And alcohol. So, but there was nothing that the coroner, I'm trying to figure out the word. The coroner said that there was nothing in his system to the amount that would have incapacitated him that he couldn't have fought back to someone trying to slit his wrist.
Yes, and there was a lack of hesitance marks for the wounds there was no defense marking. So someone didn't come at him, as far as we could tell. Right.
So now that makes people believe that one of the theories is now here's the thing, as you explained earlier, Cayleigh, before we jump even to that, is that his family doubted this big time because Danny was squeamish.
Yes.
He hated blood. So they figured that if he was going to kill himself, it wouldn't have been in that way.
Yeah, it would have been in a way where he wouldn't have to see that.
Right. But then you've got the idea that Danny, was on this path, wasn't finding out enough proof, and decided to kill himself in a way that would look suspicious to the people that know him best. Power through it, and because he believed in it so much that he wanted people to continue his research after he was dead. And maybe he was just depressed to the point where he's like, I need to end my life, and at least I'll go out with some meaning. We don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's a pretty crazy thing. He was an author too. This guy, he enjoyed amateur boxing. He raised horses. He had a pretty full life. He had a family for a time. I believe he and his wife divorced before his death, obviously. But he did write a book. It's called The Ice King. And I was looking it up. And it's the only thing he's ever written, that's been published like that. But I've been looking it up. The cheapest copy goes for $250.
Oh, God.
And then there's one that's in better condition for $450 for this book.
That's crazy.
So I'm tempted. I'm tempted to buy it because it would just be a little thing to have, and I kind of want to read it. You think, but he did sign it and everything, which is kind of cool.
Wow.
But so, again, to recap, octopus. journalist, and kind of studying it.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, he turns up dead
Mm-hmm.
under kind of an odd suicide condition.
And wasn't his the place where he kept his files with him, wasn't that missing from his hotel room, or did I read that wrong?
I believe you may be right
Yeah.
on that. I believe his files may have been gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have never heard anything of them finding everything he had.
Yeah.
Because he had like a briefcase and all that, and like
Mm-hmm.
a tote that was
Mm-hmm.
full of paperwork
Mm-hmm.
and the proof and whatnot. But I don't know if anyone found it. I don't know now. It could go either way. It could be
Yeah.
the government took it, or it could
Or
be
he could have dumped it.
or he could have dumped it because there was nothing of interest in it,
Yeah.
and he knew that, and he knew the information in there wasn't substantial enough
Mm-hmm.
and would have discredited him.
Or maybe he was just in a moment of like depressed anger, rage, or whatever you want to call it. Just desperation, just like said, screw it.
Right.
I'm done with this. And just
Right.
got rid of it all. So we don't know.
One of the people that covered this story, another journalist who covered Danny's story, said that the event, the things he was studying
Mm-hmm.
are enough to make you insane, like actually drive you insane legitimately. As a sane person going in and investigating these legitimate, claims,
Mm-hmm.
it's enough to drive you insane.
Wow.
It could drive a sane man crazy. Because
I was going pretty crazy reading like the government conspiracy stuff. It was
right,
just
and that's
like,
just
whoa.
us like doing some like
Yeah, that's
some
light research.
right, that's light research, so we have something to talk about, because it would take months and years to actually go deep into each and every single one of these things that he was going into. We do recommend going and doing your own research on it.
It's a labyrinth, though.
It is. It absolutely is, and it'll creep you out.
Yes.
I think the octopus. What do you think, Cayleigh? Do you think the octopus, there's some validity there?
I don't know about the octopus as an organization itself, because again, he doesn't really detailed in his thesis about this particular group. But I can't help but think, after reading all of this crap about distributing illegal software illegally to other countries, and the whole thing with the Illuminati and the one world government, that there's like something there. I just don't know what it is or to what degree of power it has.
Right.
But I'd be hard pressed to believe that, everything's the way it seems on the surface.
Yeah, I don't think it is. Myself, now, like you, I don't know if it's some organization like the octopus that has an arm and everything, and it kind of controls us, like kind of like a puppet master. It controls all the societies in the world. But it makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
You can look at Hillary and Bernie running right now, and you can see how screwed up the election system is. Mm-hmm. And to say that Bernie could clearly have more supporters, but he gets less, in the long run.
Yeah. Regardless of who you're for, it's just the system itself,
right,
no matter who's running, is screwed up.
And that's because the forefathers didn't trust us, which, to a degree, they were right to not do.
Yeah, they were totally right. They're absolutely
especially
right.
after the Revolutionary War, because we were a bunch of flighty freaks back then, and we didn't even know what we were really doing. So, yeah, but perhaps let's get to the final little bit, the most poetic little instance of this entire story. Danny Castellaro's dead. We're now coming to his funeral. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if you read about this, Cayleigh, the guy who showed up. Mm-hmm. As he was in his casket, as he was being put into the ground, a limousine pulled up to the funeral service. Mm-hmm. And a man dressed in a highly decorated military garb. I mean, this was a highly decorated military official. Got out of the car with someone just wearing plain clothing. Mm-hmm. He walked to the casket as it was being set in and put a medal down on top of the casket, saluted, turned on, and walked away without saying a word to anyone. Mm-hmm. And they drove off, and the casket was set in the ground and buried. Mm-hmm. And people thought it was kind of weird, but because he had never actually served in the military at all, so this was just even more bizarre, and people believed that it was some guy, in the military who knows all of this stuff going on, and he was kind of giving him a salute for attempting to do what he did.
That was his way of giving, I don't know. What's
giving
the
thanks.
Word? Thank
right.
you.
You tip your hat.
I didn't want to say giving thanks because it's not Thanksgiving and it feels weird.
Oh, well, yeah, that's
but
you know,
to show his gratitude.
Right. So I mean, that take it as you will. I don't know. It's just such a crazy story. Definitely look it up on your own. It's such a huge story that it's almost impossible to cover it in even like a 6-hour-long podcast.
Yeah, no, you'd be here forever.
You'd be here forever. You would. And that's kind of the dealio with this story. So we do recommend looking it up. Danny Casolaro. If I'm pronouncing that right, I hope so. I hope it's not Casolaro. But I'm not sure because even when you look up these last names, you don't know how they pronounced it. So there's Garofalo and then there's Garofalo, and it's just really annoying. Like, that's an example of a last name that drives me nuts because they're spelled the same but pronounced completely differently depending on who you are.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's another conspiracy right there, I think. It's the government. It's the octopus pulling the strings.
It's pronunciation on last names.
Right. Yes, it is. Thank you, Cayleigh. I'm glad you agree with that. Anyway, what do you think about the Danny situation? Do you think there is a secret government organization out there pulling the strings in just about all major decision-making across the globe? Or do you think it's a bunch of hooey? Do you believe in the Illuminati? Or do you not? Or do you think it's nothing? Do you think there's just a straightforward election process? There's a straightforward doing business? There's a straightforward anything? Nothing out there is set up as an October surprise.
It's all surface level.
It's all surface level. It's all straightforward on the level. It's all just,
no one is bullshitting you.
Right. No one's bullshitting you. You just think, and at this point, I think it seems like we think that it's not this way by how intense I am about going into the detail. You think that everything's just peachy, don't you?
Everything's fine.
Everything's just great. But yeah, I don't know what you think. So let us know in the comments section below. And if you're on SoundCloud anyway, if you're listening in. If you're on iTunes, give us a 5-star rating and leave a nice comment. We do read them. We do check them over. And we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Seriously Strange podcast, brought to you by myself, Rob Dyke, and
Cayleigh, Elise.
Yes, very good. You got it. Is it Ellis or
Elise?
Elise? It depends on who you are, I guess. That's the other conspiracy. We'll talk about that next week. Just kidding. No, we won't. And again, just one little reminder, head over to audible.com/SeriouslyStrangeCast and start your free 30-day trial with Audible. Get a free audiobook when you start. You can't go wrong. Learn some new things. Expand your mind. Listen anywhere you want on any of your devices. Honestly, I use it. Cayleigh uses it. We love it. And we wouldn't recommend it if it wasn't on the level, unlike the octopus. Unlike the octopus.
Just under the level.
Yeah, it's on the level. All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Is that it, Cayleigh? You good?
That's it. I'm good.
All right, and we are going to shoot for filming our first episode this coming week.
Yay.
Pretty pumped about that. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.